Welcome to Permaculture Vision's tutorial about soils, how to protect and build productive soil. Good soils do two main things. They sequester carbon and they nourish the plants and therefore they nourish us. There are 5 components of soil, topsoil. Firstly, the soil needs air. Secondly, it needs water to get into it, not just to sit on it or run underneath. It needs nutrients. It needs organic matter, or as some people call it. And it also needs organisms. The organisms allow the good soil to continue to grow, to continue to cycle and make the organic matter into nutrients. Poor soils can offer specialist niches. So maybe there are some native plants or adapted food plants that prefer poor soils, particularly poor soils. So before you set about to create the perfect soil, investigate the value of the existing unusual soils. To make good soil, we need to think about the threats or the barriers. Whatever effort we make, we don't want it to be undone. So we need to think about the chances of erosion, flood, wind, and too much sun. The next step would be to identify your resources. Look at the vegetation that's already there. Perhaps that's a valuable vegetation, or perhaps you can take some of it to create better soil. Look at the tools that you either own or can borrow, or are there some tools that you can create? And then use your waste. The waste is a valuable resource. And find ways to build the organisms that are on the site. Fungi and glomalin are critical to holding the soil together, reducing erosion, and supporting the plants. So if you have young plants and they don't have the beneficial fungi and glomalin from their parents, you might need to bring a little bit of that to the site. Most people will notice the weeds on a site. Some people say a weed is simply a plant out of place. Because a permaculture system works to create a diverse collection of food plants, a weed would therefore be a plant that dominates the food forest and doesn't support diversity. Weeds can be indicators. For instance, flat weeds on bare soil can indicate compaction, whereas lush green weeds can indicate an abundance of nitrogen. Weeds are generally willing workers. They're pioneer species. They do 3 main things. They mine poor soils, searching for minerals. And then they shelter the soil because nothing else will grow. They go in there first and they shelter the soil from erosion. And thirdly, they do create habitat for animals, especially insects. There are medicinal weeds, for instance. This common weed that I know as petty spurge contains a chemical that my family have been prescribed to reduce their skin cancers. Many weeds are the forefathers of ancient foods. And the reason why we don't eat them now is because humanity has modified many of these foods so that they're easier to harvest, more palatable, and have less defensive chemicals in them. So be careful. Some of them are highly toxic, but some of them are fine. If you want to create soil, we need to think about those 5 components: air, water, nutrients, organic matter, and organisms. By creating those 5 components, we will have good soil. So how do we accelerate soil creation? To aerate the soil, we could dig it, but don't turn it, because the minute you turn the soil, especially on thin soils or poor soils, what you're doing is you're killing the microorganisms and their dead bodies become fertilizer. But we can't afford to do that in thin soils like Australian soils. Secondly, we could rip the soil, that is like slicing a cake, but not plough it because ploughs can turn it. You could use a keyline plough which just rips like a comb going through the hair. Another way to aerate the soil is to spike it, like little stiletto marks all over the soil. But a quick and easy way to start the aeration process is to use earthworms. And you can build your earthworms with no dig and mulching. To hydrate the soil, that is to put more water into it, we use keyline irrigation, we can contour the garden paths, we can use swales, we can use wicking systems, we can mulch to reduce the evaporation, and we can even use a living mulch. Now, the easiest way to nourish, to put nutrients into the soil, is to use compost. Compost will help acid soils become less acidic, bring it to neutral, and it will help acidic soils to become neutral. In some cases, you might want to apply rock dust or ash if it's particularly acidic. Adding organic matter creates the compost, and that creates the nutrients anyway. We can add organic matter by mulching the area with prunings or using pioneer plants and then harvesting off them. But the easiest way to add organic matter is to use waste. Any biodegradable waste can be applied to the soil, even if it's just added to the top. To build the organisms in the soil, you have two choices. You can try and build up what's already there, support the existing organisms, or you can add food and organisms from nearby forests. This is quite a typical traditional method by the French. The French would go into a nearby forest and harvest worms and organic matter from mature trees and bring that into the fields. In fact, the organisms are a vital part of the nitrogen cycle. In order to use and continue to generate nutrients in the soil, we need organisms. If we do nothing, the soil that we are stewards of will most likely erode. Although in some areas doing nothing might be the right thing to do. It could allow the earth to heal. If we follow traditional advice, soil will grow at about 1 centimetre every 5 years. And that's too slow. So here are some ways to make soil grow faster. The easiest way to build soil is to use our own biodegradable waste, either as mulch or in the compost or worm farm. Also, use the weeds. If the weeds are particularly tough, you can turn them into liquid manure, also known as compost tea. Next time you have a fire, make biochar. Biochar is an amazing way to support the microorganisms. After this, consider using animals to provide fertilizer, weeding, and the waste conversion. And finally, start a forest with pioneer plants and use them to build the supply of organic matter.